But yeah, like this whole like rise of Ben Shapiro and like all these people, like yeah, they're like the alternative to like what's going on, but like the more and more I see of Ben Shapiro and the more and more I see of like Jordan Peterson and all this stuff, and how Owen Owen did really good job exposing all these people, and I'm glad they did it, and he exposed Joe Rogan to me, because I always thought Joe was kind of stupid. Like if I went on Joe Rogan's show, like I would be constantly asking him, like, are you retarded or something? Like, what do you like these questions? Like if I was on Joe Rogan's show and he was interviewing me, and I was like talking about Steemit and cryptocurrency and all this stuff, like, and like the questions he asked these people, it's like, are you like seriously? Are you like retarded? Like, wow, he's just
Yeah.
so dumb, and he has
Yeah, I
all
was
these
mentioned.
people that
Yeah.
follow him, but because he talks here. You know what? Because he talks authoritatively, and we're just having a conversation. It's just two guys. We're having a conversation about a conversation. That's what's important in life, right? And you can't fault people for that. That's my Joe Rogan impression. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean that was cool like 3-4 years ago, and now it's just like, all right, dude. Like I said, I mentioned it. I don't know if I put it in here. I don't know where I was, but like he had, in like a 2-week span, he had Edward Snowden on for 3 hours, which was, I had to turn it off. That's how boring it was, even though it's Edward Snowden. I mean, he's a boring guy. I mean, he's very interesting in what he's done, but he's not like an interesting, like, he's just not really that interesting to talk. I mean, I knew most of it just by reading, but you can't watch it because Rogan didn't, like, Page Zero, yeah, he's tried. You can't.
He's too dumb. He doesn't even
Yeah.
know what to ask. He's
Yeah,
so
and
dumb.
Snowden's, he has, like, but like Patient Zero said, like, Snowden's boring, but you can make it an interesting conversation if you've actually, like, if I interviewed Edward Snowden, I'd have interesting questions for him. But
Right.
but Rogan doesn't read. He's just like, I had Edward Snowden on. Then 2 weeks later, he had if Alex Jones, if a homeless man, it doesn't matter. It's just Rogan doesn't have any knowledge. 2 weeks later, he had my favorite journalist on, and I don't even agree with his politics. Matt Taibbi he used to be on Rolling Stone, and now he has his own. He was like ostracized from Rolling Stone for saying that Russiagate was bullshit. So he's like in my opinion, he's like an old school, like journalist in the way that Seymour Hersh is, who's like one of my idols. He's funny the way he writes. He's down the middle in terms of, I don't care if it's Obama, Bush, Clinton, Trump. When they're right, they're right. They're wrong, they're wrong. And Rogan has him on there for 2 hours, and like all they talked about was like, Rogan was like, dude, isn't it weird how wacky the world is? And Taibbi was like, yeah, it's really wacky there, Joe. Like, dude, you didn't read a book, nothing. You got nothing. It's Matt Taibbi. You can't bring up, like, you could have talked about the Syria hoax. You could have talked about how Russiagate was bullshit. You could talk about how CNN, all this stuff. And all they talked about was the same stuff Rogan always talks about. The fighting on the two sides, it's just so crazy. And it's like, dude, people are over you. And it doesn't hurt that, Owen Benjamin just he's in your head at this point. When I watch these people, I just can't get over I call him Toe Rogan. I just do it. I don't even mean to. But yeah, I think people like, I'm done being like pigeonholed in terms of what I watch. Like, I watch Jimmy Dore a lot. I don't agree with 80% of what he says when I watch it, but it's a real dude just saying his opinion,
Yep.
And it's not just like he's tiptoeing about what to say and what not to say. Like, even like Joey Diaz, who's like from my area of the country.
Yep.
Foul mouth, just kind of, you never thought he would cuck himself. He was rambling the last time I listened to him, and this was months ago, about some kind of, I think it was transparents. He met transparents somewhere, and they were really good, and we have to stop the hate. And it's like, dude, you don't really believe that. You just don't want to get booted off YouTube. You want to make sure you get a new Netflix special.
Yep.
It's just sad. It's really sad. And like, but then at the same time, I don't know if I've become a cranky old man, but also like the whole culture thing. And I don't know if you're on the same level as me with this, Truth Force, but like, I don't really want to hear from, like, I've changed. Like, I don't want to hear from a 55-year-old man who just smokes like immense amounts of marijuana all day and like can't even keep a shit together for like an hour. I'd much rather listen to the guy who's like, hey, I kicked booze for a year. I mean, I didn't kick booze, I drank, but like I don't know. It's like I don't want to hear about the 50-year-olds, the two 50-year-old comedians talking about like, poop and whatever the fuck shit jokes all day. Like I'm like, don't you guys want to like grow up a little bit and like don't you have some kind of intellectual, like, how George Carlin started out and he was just like a comedian and he had shock comedy, and by the end he was a political comic. Because I feel like that's the way you're supposed to be as a man, like, or a woman, or just as an adult. You're supposed to be more intellectually curious when you get older, and you're supposed to just I don't know, like my focus has changed and I'm just not interested in listening. Like, when I put on Joe Rogan and he has his buddies on, it just, to me, it sounds like four just children, some high school kids just talking about nothing for 3 hours.
It's like four dumb jocks talking about nothing and smoking weed. It's like,
yeah. And like you can do that. Like I do that with my friends, but like I don't have a show. When we get messed up and talk, we're talking about like the mysteries of the universe, or what the fuck's going on with Antarctica, or whatever's, we're not just sitting there going, yeah, well, I don't like that brand of shoe, or Kanye's new, like who cares? Like I don't know. And I think the audience is changing. The younger generation seems to be too down the middle. They're either completely useless or they're like more intellectually curious than their parents. That's what I've noticed. Regardless if you agree with them or not, like you could be a crazy Antifa kid running around on college campus. You're stupid in what you believe in, but their parents are just like, well, you're going to screw up your college, your career options. Like that's all they care about. And it's like people are over it. They want to have something else to really focus on, Oh, what's the freedom to? Oh yeah, that Ruben one. I love that one.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
That could be Rogan though. It's the same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of the main problem I've kind of identified, at least a few years ago, is that when I started to get into the crypto space, like I noticed that like there's a lot of people who seem to be authoritative, but as you listen to them more and more, you realize that they're really stupid and they have no idea what they're talking about. And then I started to notice that in like the podcasting space for politics and everything too. And it really started to remind me of like one of my family members. He was married to this woman who was just very manipulative, and she would just tell all these lies. And when you would talk to her and you first met her, you thought she was like a really like good person and she would like be really nice to you. And as time goes on, she would start to burn all these bridges. She'd make up lies about things. She would say that like people were racist to her and saying stuff to her, and then she started saying like my parents said racist stuff to her, and then she ended up like separating like my brother from like the family, and he was like isolated, and she made him lose all of his friends. Like it's just like this. It's this type of personality. I'm starting to see it more and more all over the place in these big podcasts. It's just these people who are like isolating you into like, and like you're watching their content, like Joe Rogan. People are turning to Joe Rogan because they think, oh, he's like my friend, because they're seeing all the stuff that he would talk about with his friends. So it tricks you into thinking you're part of like this circle of friends of him. But in reality, if he ever met you, he wouldn't like talk to you like that. And if you tried to like be like his bro, he would like think you're weird, and he'd be like, get the fuck away from me, probably. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think you said that you saw him somewhere before. Or did you see Joe Rogan? Or maybe I'm thinking.
Yeah, I saw him in Atlantic City.
Yeah. How was that?
Well, the problem is I bought the tickets. Well, my girl bought me tickets when I was a big fan, and then I got introduced to Owen Benjamin. So by the time I went, he was just Joe Rogan, and he wasn't funny. But he wasn't funny. It wasn't that he was ruined in a bad, like he was objectively not that funny. Because he was just, you could see that his jokes, he would go to the edge, and then like he would not go over it because he was terrified of backlash, which isn't funny. You know, it's just not. And I just posted the tinfoil hat because you made me think about this. Yeah, I didn't find him funny, Patience Zero. But I mean, whatever. I didn't laugh out loud like once when I saw him live. I mean, because he told jokes that I've heard other people tell. Just they're not. He didn't steal them, but he was like, "Oh, well, isn't it weird how like men can't be men anymore and everybody's trying to be gay?" It's like, yeah, that's a premise that everybody knows. Great, but then the next day, Joe will have like, 4 little beta males on from San Francisco on his podcast, and he won't point out that like they are the guys that he's fun of,
right?
Or it's just when you go back and forth, about what you think is who you're agreeing. Like you don't have to disagree with people, but you have to like. I don't know where he is on it, and the whole idea that like, oh, he's just an interviewer, and he goes with the flow of the guest. It's like it's not. I could watch. Then I'll turn on the radio.
Right.
Like I have a long commute now, and sometimes I'll throw on sports talk radio on the actual radio, which I have not listened to in years. And that's how I hear Rogan the same way. Like they're like company men. He's like a company man now. It's weird. The company is, you can smoke weed and go crazy, but he's still a company man. There's still things he won't touch.
Yep.
He went from, and again, you don't have to believe any of this stuff. He went from the moon landing is fake to the moon landing is real and conspiracy theories are schizophrenic. Like you're telling me that he stayed up at night in his mansion in the dark on YouTube and and the internet and just read all that stuff and just decided, yep, yeah, that's true. Like, no, it's not how it went. But
well, there's one thing I want to add to this. So one of our subscribers over on YouTube, I was chatting with here in the live chat, Johnny Canuck, he said he didn't like much of Joe's comedy, but he's very likable and personable.
Oh, I'm sure he's a nice person. I don't like hate the guy, but again, I don't care about any of these people. But go ahead.
So the insidiousness of a very likable person who's personable is that they're essentially camouflaging that they're master manipulators, which is very easy for me to see because I don't try to manipulate people. I actually I'm like if I were to categorize myself, I'm the opposite of a manipulator. I'm very open about everything I do, and if someone asks me something, I tell them the truth, and like truth is like the best policy, like is my thing. But with Joe Rogan, truth is not the best policy with him, because you could ask him something that he feels is a certain way, or he wants to say something controversial, and he won't do it because he's disguising himself behind that likable persona because he wants to try to gain as much power as he can. And it's one of those traits that, kind of going back to my brother's ex-wife, that she kind of would have, where once she finally had a hold over somebody, then she let her real self go. And that's kind of like what these people do is, and they start lashing out, and he eventually divorced her because she's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But
I just look at Rogan, and the word that comes to mind when I put him on now is stunted. Like, it's stunted. Like he says the same. Like if somebody goes, if there's he has the new, like he had the one-eyed penis guy on. I didn't watch it. What's his name? Crenshaw, that guy.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure, like, I didn't watch it, but let's say gun control came up. I'm sure Joe had the same lines that he's been saying about gun control for the last 3 years, where he says something pro-gun, but then something anti-gun in the middle.
And it's all crazy, and how weird it is. And
he's like don't we all want to get along guy. Which maybe that's who he is, but if that's who he is, fine. But that's boring. Like, I don't care. Like but like, what got me interested in him initially was that he was having celebrities on his podcast and they were letting their guard down. That was the initial stuff in his house. You know, he had like Anthony Bourdain on like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they got high, and he asked about JFK, and they argued about the JFK assassination, or like, what is it like to go to Indonesia and eat rat food, or whatever the fuck. But now it's like, he's like, oh, I'm gonna have the Twitter guy on, and then like 3 hours of that and nothing. Like, he pushed back enough, but like, not. You know, it's just like, I don't care. He's not. And then and he's authorized is the word now. He's the guy, which is fine. But like I posted before, you mentioned just like the more you listen to these podcast political guys, the more you realize how dumb they are. So I had the tinfoil hat, which is Sam Tripoli, who is a complete moron. Like, he's literally sounds like a meth head when you talk. But I'll put his podcast on because he talks about wacky shit. Like, he'll go into like the Epstein shit. He's actually really good with that. Like, he really follows that pedophilia conspiracy stuff. Like, he gets those people on. So like almost like Patient Zero says with Rogan, he has good guests on. So I'll put him on. So he had Scott Horton on, which if you follow me at all, he's like my hero in terms of he knows everything about every war ever. You don't have him. He's serious. He doesn't fuck around. He's there to tell you the shit. And if you try to watch that, listen to that BitChute video, I don't want to use the word cringe, but it is like, it actually makes it's cringe worthy because he's so fucked up on drugs or whatever, just retarded. Oops, I said the N word. Sam Tripoli. That like Horton is just like rattling off just immense amounts of data and facts and historical accuracies about the Iraq War, Afghan War, and you should double down on that and go, wow, wait, can you dive into that a little bit? Like, I never heard of that. Like, you can expand on that for my audience. And like Tripoli's response is like, yeah, man, that's fucked up, man. Like, yeah, man, we got, man. And it's like, yeah, you're an idiot. Like, this is a waste. Why am I? And he's, but he's pushed by, the Rogans and the other guy, Joey Diaz and Theo Vaughn and all those guys. And like, fine. Like, I don't find Sam Tripoli that funny as comedy. Like, his whole thing is I'm dirty. Great. That's fine. But like, now he's the conspiracy guy that we're going to push. Like, that's the guy. He can't even like complete a sentence without like zoning out. And a guy like Scott Horton, who he is debating actual people in a couple months, but he should be debating academics are going on that show. And it's just like, I just feel like there's an intellectual thirst on the internet, and we know the people that we can follow in the shows. They're smaller that people like to listen to, but they'll never get big because the big guys, in my opinion, are just like, they're gatekeepers, but some of them are just there to be stupid. Like, they're not, I don't know. It's like a low hum, like a low IQ frequency. It's just not, it's not going to get to that extra, like, again, Matt Taibbi on Joe Rogan, a real journalist finally on Joe Rogan. Let's go after it. Let's break down Russiagate. Let's get into Carter Page, the whole thing. And it's just like, man, Russiagate's crazy, right? That's it. Yeah, Joe, it's crazy. Like, that's it. Come on, man. And it's not the weed, because I can vouch 100% fact. Scott Horton smokes marijuana. Firsthand knowledge of that. So that's not an excuse. He interviews Ron Paul twice a month. Tom Woods. He's debating Bill Kristol, Mr. Neocon in a couple months. That the weed is not a thing. It's just Rogan is not smart. He's not. He's just anybody can go on his show and just sell him anything. And whoa, really? Wow. So
yeah, I was thinking is, imagine if Joe Rogan's show
I saw Patient Zero say weed weapons, and I thought he was talking kind of like DARPA thing. I was like, what are we doing?
Imagine if Joe Rogan had a show where it's just him talking for 3 hours. Like, that would be just terrible.
We'd have to come up with stories to talk about. Like, if he didn't add Jamie, there's no Jamie. It's just him in his house on a live stream or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, he could do MMA. He can listen. If I want to watch
hunting, but that's pretty much it.
But if I want to watch it, but there's other hunting guys. But if I want to watch a cage fight, I'm going to go to Joe Rogan. Like, that's fine. But like, that's not what's being pushed. He's not being pushed to the audience for his cage fighting knowledge. He's being pushed as the truth seeker guy, which is just a joke. Yeah, I don't know how we got so deep into Rogan, but I think it's just because he's the podcast guy, and there's so many other podcasters that I find interesting. I don't agree with everything they say. Some of them are rambling about, like, Owen got me on that Crow 777 guy. I don't even know what the hell he's talking about half the time. He's talking about just fucking nuclear bombs aren't real and there's rockets aren't real. I don't know anything about that. I don't even care if it's real or if they're fake. This guy reads books and he's a physicist, and I'd rather listen to him talk than some moron. But then again, I'll listen to comedy like Ari Shaffir, but his podcast is about goofiness. Like, he's like, I'm Ari Shaffir, I'm a moron, I'm just a comedian. So you go into it, and that's what you get. It's not this weird gatekeeping situation.
Legion of Skanks, I watched a lot of their stuff. If you ever,
but yeah, you're getting there. Dave Smith will throw some stuff in there, but that's just the most vile thing you could listen to. I laughed my ass off on that. And even if I don't like an episode of Legion, support it just on the free speech just thing.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are pushing the envelope, and they deserve my support. I might try to get to a show at some point, but
yeah, they're pretty.
I don't want them to throw piss on me or whatever.
Or take a gun up the butt. There was something where they had a gun up the butt. I didn't watch that episode yet, but what's his face? Lewis won.
Jay Gomez.
Yeah, Lewis won because he only had to get one ball in the hoop out of 20 shots or something. I mean, even I could do that. I don't even play basketball. I'm not even that good, but I could get a few out of 20 for sure. So,
yeah.
But
I just heard Alex Jones thing.
Well, we could go on for a few more minutes. We're like at an hour and 12 minutes now, but I just want to keep it a little bit under an hour and a half.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it a little shorter.
Yeah, and then for like you guys tuning in, I know we've kind of been not really around much. There's just been a lot of stuff with the holidays, and we've just been out and about. I've been seeing my family and hanging out. I think you said you got like a house or something, and you're working on all that shit
here. And I'm trying to get serious with just life stuff. Which again, you have to weigh it. Like, I don't want to be the guy in his apartment just doing internet videos all day. Like, that's not, because I feel like that eventually gets transparent. Like, there's nothing there. Like, some guy screaming into the computer all day. Why are they so angry? Are they angry? Like, do they have a kid that they're fighting for? Do they have a family they're fighting for? Is their country being invaded? Or are they just miserable,
Right.
And so you just gotta unplug. And I feel like the whole country is just miserable and screaming and yelling, and I'm just backing up, going, okay,